Well, something pretty interesting is happening in the world of Spider-Man, and it could indicate a major Spider-Man foe coming to life in the MCU, kind of again. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about the rumors from earlier today about Norman Osborn showing up in the MCU and how I think Marvel's going to shoehorn this plot point in there. Well, as many of you know, during Spider-Man No Way Home, we saw the resurgence of some classic Spider-Man villains from previous Marvel projects. Now, these villains were from some of those Sony Spider-Man movies and included Electro, Sandman, Dr. Octopus, and William Dafoe as Norman Osborn. Now, the resurgence of Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, well, it was pretty awesome, and Dafoe brings the character to life in a way that's more than a little bit exciting. Now, many of us figured, given the logistics of all this, well, this character was never coming to life again inside the Marvel Universe. But now we've got some new reports that seem to indicate that is not the case. Now, before we dive into it though, I want to make sure you know this is via Daniel Rickman, not from Marvel Studios or Sony, so we're taking it with a grain of salt. But if you know Rickman's track record, you know he's pretty spot on with most of his reporting, stands by his scoops, and will even backtrack when the guy is wrong, so we generally listen to what he has to say. Now, what Dan is reporting is that Marvel is indeed planning to introduce an MCU version of Norman Osborn. But honestly, not many more details beyond that, so this leads to a ton of questions. Obviously, Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, is the quintessential Spider-Man villain. There isn't a bigger face that's ever squared off with the webhead than the Green Goblin himself, and the character reaches deep in the Spider-Man mythos and lore and has impacted Spider-Man and the greater Marvel Universe in ways that are really hard to put into such a short video. Now, how they'll do this though is the big question. If you're familiar with what happened in No Way Home, well, when that version of Norman Osborn came to the Marvel Universe, he made it really clear that his Oscorp did not exist. Now, obviously in the Marvel timeline, this was a few years ago, but if that version of Norman Osborn could not locate his counterpart on this Earth, well, that opens the door to a lot of questions. Now, I first want you to consider, though, the possibility that he couldn't find this version of himself because his alter ego prevented it. That's right, Norman may have always been there, but the Green Goblin persona inside that version of Norman Osborn's head might have basically sidetracked the character, not allowing him to uncover the proper resources and maybe potential help he would need. This is something that alternate persona did many times, and he was in control way more often than people give him credit for. So I want to make sure that door stays open, because it's an easy way to explain why the alternate universe Osborn was not able to locate the MCU version. Now, obviously though, if Oscorp existed in a large way, well, Peter Parker or May or many other characters may have actually known of its existence, and this creates another problem, but also one that's easy to solve. In the world of corporate America, and that's exactly what exists in the Marvel Universe, corporations gobble up other corporations all the time. And when you're looking at the trouble that Stark Industries was facing at the end of No Way Home, with Happy Hogan in the crosshairs of federal investigators, the technology leaking out, and even the potential fallout from the cancelled Armor Wars project, well, you could see a path where a relatively unknown version of Norman Osborn is able to capitalize on all these details and launch Oscorp into the public eye. Now, what's curious to me, though, is if this happens, our version of Peter Parker will already be well aware that Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, and how they work those details out, I have no idea. But it's not impossible to bring this character to life in the MCU, it's just very complicated. We also have to caveat the whole thing with the understanding that after Secret Wars, well, the Marvel Cinematic Universe might get a bit of a soft reboot. And part of that soft reboot is a rumored inclusion of many of the Sony characters and Spider-Man villains. If Marvel is going to dovetail the X-Men right into their new world, well, there's no reason why many Spider-Man villains can't be dovetailed in the same way. And although Dan says they are planning to introduce Norman Osborn in his report, he does not say they're planning to introduce him in Brand New Day, suggesting to me that there are plans for the character, but we don't want to assume he's part of the upcoming movie, especially as full as that roster already is. Now, we're going to watch this Spider-Man report really closely because I think the inclusion of Norman Osborn in the Marvel Universe is going to have big implications. Not only that, it also suggests to me that these next two Spider-Man movies making up this second trilogy could indeed see big focus on the Green Goblin and also the character of Gwen Stacy. And if you know the Spider-Man history and the association with the Green Goblin and the potential character Sadie Sink is playing, well, these are many key details that could be coming together and may bring us a classic Spider-Man tale. Obviously, we're following this really closely. I'm super excited about the potential for Norman Osborn in the Marvel Universe, but at this point, it's all questions to me, so how it works out, we're going to have to wait and see. Before we take off, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC news, and we want to bring you all the news truthfully and transparently, so you're really in the know.